Hey Steelers Nation, how's everybody holding up? Because honestly, this stretch of the season has been something else. The mood around the team, the fan base, and even inside the locker room feels tense, uncertain, and full of that question nobody wants to ask out loud. What's really going on with this defense, and when will things finally click? I'm not here to paint some doomsday picture or predict another ugly loss. But let's be real. Something has to give. The bleeding has to stop. The tourniquet's got to start working. You can't keep leaning on luck, on the division being messy, on other teams falling apart. Eventually, this team has to find its own answers, take ownership, and flip the script before the season slips away completely. Now imagine this scenario. This isn't a prediction. It's just a picture in your head. Colts 16, Steelers 14. Painful, right? But not catastrophic. You fought hard. You hung in there. You gave the number one team in the league a real battle. That's not defeatism. That's a wake-up call. Because at this point, what really matters isn't the scoreline. What matters is whether this team can find its identity again. Can they tighten up on defense, communicate better, and stop overcomplicating things? Can they bring back that raw, blue-collar, smash-mouth style that used to define Pittsburgh football? Look, facing a team like the Colts right now is no small task. They're not flashy for the sake of it. They're balanced, they're disciplined, and they know how to control a game. They can move the chains with that offensive line, pound the ball on the ground with Jonathan Taylor, and then torch you when you start stacking the box. But if you hold them to 16 points, you've done something right. You've forced them to earn every yard. Maybe they got down the field a few times, made you sweat a little, but at key moments, you held your ground. You took the ball away. You gave your offense a fighting chance. And maybe, just maybe, the offense managed to stay alive too. Not lighting up the scoreboard, but keeping drives alive, chewing the clock, and showing some rhythm. That's how progress starts. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but it's real. Because here's the truth. Winning a 40-38 shootout doesn't necessarily mean growth. It means survival. And survival isn't enough anymore. You can wave your towels, celebrate the big plays, but deep down you'll know that something still feels off. That the foundation isn't solid yet. And that's what this team has to fix before it's too late. Defensive coordinator Terrell Austin said something that stuck with me. When asked about whether the defense needs to simplify things, he didn't shy away from it. He talked about scaling back, cutting out unnecessary complexity, and focusing on putting guys in position to just play football. That might sound basic, but maybe that's exactly what's been missing. This defense doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. It just needs to remember how to roll. Sometimes you can't outsmart everyone. You've got to outwork them. The players feel that too. They've said they want less confusion, fewer exotic schemes that force them to overthink every snap. They don't want to spend 3 seconds calculating coverage adjustments when they should be reading the quarterback's eyes or blowing up a run gap. They just want clarity, see ball, hit ball, finish plays. And if simplifying things makes them look a little more predictable for a while, so be it. Because predictable and disciplined beats chaotic and lost every single time. Now, let's talk about what this could mean going forward. If the defense tightens up, even just a little, that could create the spark the team needs to bounce back. You start seeing more energy on the sidelines, more communication between units, more belief. And that's when things start to snowball in a good way. Suddenly, the offense feels that confidence too. The defense makes a big stop, and the offense answers with a sustained drive. That rhythm between both sides of the ball, it's what's been missing all season. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of work to be done. You're not suddenly turning into a top 5 defense overnight. You're not magically solving every coverage lapse or missed tackle. But maybe you start by cutting down on the mental mistakes, cleaning up the fundamentals, and trusting each other again. You do that, and you give yourself a chance against anyone, even the best in the league. Of course, some fans are already talking about the hot seat. Is this the game that gets Austin fired? Does giving up another 30 points mean the end of the line for him? Honestly, that's not how it works. You don't just swap out a coordinator mid-season and expect instant results, especially when the head coach isn't a defensive play caller by trade. Mike Tomlin's never been that guy with a laminated play sheet covering his mouth and calling every snap. He's the motivator, the overseer, the tone setter. If you pull the plug on Austin, who's stepping up to fill that void? There isn't a clear answer. And that's why, for better or worse, this coaching staff has to figure out together. There's no magic fix coming from outside. No secret savior waiting in the wings. You work with what you've got. You grind. You simplify. You find your footing again, one game at a time. That's what's realistic right now. Fans might not want to hear that, especially after watching the same issues repeat week after week. Missed tackles, blown assignments, lack of pressure. But football doesn't always offer easy answers. Sometimes the only way forward is to stop chasing shortcuts and start trusting the process again. The Steelers need to rediscover what made them who they are: resilience, discipline, and pride. And yeah, maybe the offense still has to do its part. It can't just rely on the defense to hold everything together. It needs to manage the clock, sustain drives, and stop giving the ball away at the worst possible moments. It doesn't need to be spectacular. It just needs to be functional. You score 1 touchdown and 2 field goals. You keep the game close, and you let your defense breathe. That's complimentary football. If there's one thing that has to change immediately, it's confidence. Not individual swagger, because most of these guys still believe in themselves, but collective belief. The kind of trust where every man knows the other will do his job. That's been missing. You can see it in the hesitation before the snap, the split-second delay in pursuit, the frustration after a busted coverage. They've been rattled. Not broken, not defeated, just rattled. And to be honest, it's not about whether they make the playoffs or not. Sure, they might sneak in if the rest of the division keeps stumbling, but that's not the goal. The goal is growth. The goal is rebuilding confidence in the system, in each other, and in what this team stands for. Whether it's this week, next week, or a month from now, that's the real victory they need. Now let's be honest, Steelers Nation, there's something deeper happening here than just X's and O's. It's not only about scheme, blitz percentage, or which safety drops in a coverage. It's about trust and identity. This defense, once feared across the league, now feels like a group of talented individuals still trying to remember how to move as one. You can sense it in their body language. There are moments where the communication breaks down, where you see players glancing at each other after a blown assignment, as if to say, "Was that you or me?" That uncertainty is poison on the field, because hesitation in the NFL is the one thing you cannot afford. This used to be a defense that thrived on instinct. You didn't need 1,000 pre-snap reads. You saw the ball, you attacked, you imposed your will. Guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, and Cam Hayward. These are names that used to define dominance. But lately, it feels like they've been buried under the weight of overthinking, of being asked to do too much instead of just being allowed to play. And that's what Terrell Austin was hinting at when he said they might need to scale things back. It wasn't an admission of failure. It was an acknowledgement that football is still a simple game at its core. You hit, you tackle, you communicate, and you trust the man next to you. Now, can simplifying things actually make a difference this late in the season? I think it can. You strip away the unnecessary motion and confusion, and suddenly, everyone starts reacting faster. You stop trying to be clever, and you start being effective. Sometimes the smartest play is the simplest one. Maybe that's what the Steelers need right now, to get back to a version of themselves that's direct, physical, and unapologetically aggressive. Because if you look around the league, that's how teams win in December and January. Not by dazzling people with creativity, but by doing the basics better than anyone else. When the weather turns cold and the pressure builds, it's the tough, disciplined, fundamentally sound teams that survive. The Steelers used to live for that. That's what Steel Curtain used to mean. And if they can find even a trace of that mentality again, they'll be dangerous. Still, I get why fans are frustrated. Every week feels like a test of patience. You watch the same third-down struggles, the same missed sacks, and it's easy to start pointing fingers. You wonder if Tomlin's message is getting through, if Austin's schemes are the problem, or if the players themselves just aren't locked in. But firing the coordinator isn't some magic cure. People forget how rare it is to replace a defensive play caller mid-season and have the unit improve. It's not like you can hand the headset to someone else and expect to turn around overnight. And Mike Tomlin, as steady as he's been, isn't the kind of coach who calls every defensive snap. His strength is leadership, not micromanagement. The situation reminds me of when Matt Canada was fired on the offensive side. That was different. You had assistants ready to share the load. You had an offense desperate for a new voice, and even then, it took time. On defense, there isn't that kind of infrastructure right now. There isn't a clear next man up, ready to take charge. So unless you're ready to watch the system fall apart completely, you stick with the staff you've got and make it work. The truth is, this isn't about sending a message. It's about survival. You can't rebuild an entire identity in the middle of a season, but you can start laying the foundation again. You can get the basics right, force turnovers, stop giving up huge plays, and make teams earn every yard they get. That's how you slowly claw your way back into form. And when you start to see that shift, when the defense begins playing fast and confident again, it has a ripple effect. The offense suddenly looks lighter, the play calling more fluid because they're not playing from behind. The sidelines get louder. The energy returns. That's what the Steelers need. A spark, not a miracle. Of course, it all starts with leadership, not just from the coaches, but from the players who carry weight in that locker room. You need guys like Watt and Fitzpatrick to set the tone. You need someone to stand up and say, this stops now. Because when that message comes from a peer, it hits different. It cuts deeper than anything a coach can yell in a meeting room. And the Steelers have always been at their best when the players take ownership of their own standard. Confidence has been the silent casualty of this season. You can see it in the way some drives end. There's that moment when the defense almost expects something bad to happen, like a big play over the top or a missed tackle on third down. That kind of mindset is deadly, and it doesn't change through speeches. It changes through execution. You get one big stop, one turnover, one drive where you force a punt after getting gashed the previous series, and you start to believe again. That belief spreads like wildfire. And honestly, that's what this team needs more than anything. Not a new scheme, not a scapegoat, not some desperate shakeup. They need to believe again. Because when you strip everything down, playbooks, stats, media noise, belief is what wins games. Belief that you can get the stop on third and long. Belief that your offense will put points on the board. Belief that even when the odds are stacked against you, you can fight your way out. Right now, they're still in position to turn things around. The division isn't running away from them. The schedule, while tough, gives them chances to make statements. But none of that matters if the defense doesn't find its edge again. If they can't rediscover that collective toughness, they'll keep hovering in that frustrating middle ground, too talented to bottom out, but too inconsistent to compete with the best. It's strange to say for a team that's technically near the top of the division, but this feels like a crossroads moment. Either they regroup, simplify, and play like a unit again, or they fade quietly into mediocrity. The choice is theirs. And maybe, just maybe, all it takes is one game, one gritty defensive stand, one night where they finally look like themselves again. Because from that point on, everything changes. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers have been circulating across the NFL, and it seems the rumors might just have legs. Sources suggest that the Pittsburgh Steelers have pulled off a move that could reshape their offensive identity. Speedster JAYLEN WADDLE is reportedly in Pittsburgh's fold. The word on the street is that the Steelers are ready to pivot, ushering in what insiders are calling the YAC era, a nod to the game-breaking potential of Waddle after the catch. For months, the Steelers' front office has been criticized for an offense that struggles to stretch the field and turn receptions into explosive plays. Enter Waddle, a player whose highlight reel is essentially a blur of lightning-quick moves, ankle-breaking cuts, and sideline sprints. In a league where separation can make or break a quarterback's rhythm, Waddle represents a weapon that defenses simply cannot ignore. Imagine him lining up alongside the current receiving core, forcing cornerbacks into constant scramble mode, while the Steelers' QB looks to exploit that space for massive gains. The mere idea has fans buzzing with anticipation. The timing also raises eyebrows. Pittsburgh has long sought a dynamic playmaker who can consistently generate yards after the catch, and Waddle's arrival seems tailor-made for that ambition. League insiders speculate that the Steelers are ready to lean into a more aggressive, vertical offense, one that doesn't just move the chains but threatens to rewrite expectations each Sunday. And if reports hold true, this could signal a dramatic shift in the Steelers' offensive philosophy. More speed, more separation, and more highlight reel plays that leave fans jumping out of their seats. Of course, nothing is official, and with the NFL's whirlwind of trades, signings, and last-minute pivots, fans should take these early whispers with a grain of salt. Yet, in locker rooms and sports bars alike, chatter is rising. Could this be the start of a new Pittsburgh era, where JAYLEN Waddle's blazing pace defines the offense? If the Steelers brass is betting on his YAC potential, one thing is clear. The league may need to rethink how to handle pure speed when it lands in the Steel City. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.